Hello, my name is Lewis and welcome to Gathering the Magic. Today we're looking at the $50 budget Grist the Hunger Tide EDH deck tech. Okay, so before we get into the deck tech, we have got the giveaway announcement for the customised EDH deck that me and Master Steve will help make. Obviously, if you have entered, your name is somewhere in this list of, I'd say, about 100 people, so good luck. We'll click random name, and who have we got? Soren H. Congratulations, we will message you shortly. Grist is a legendary planeswalker that says as long as it isn't on the battlefield, it's a 1/1 insect creature in addition to its other types. It has that removal -2 option to sack a creature to destroy target creature or planeswalker. For this deck, we're really going to focus on the +1 ability to create a 1/1 black-green insect creature token, mill a card, and if an insect is milled this way, put a loyalty counter on Grist and repeat and repeat and repeat. So this deck is going to be stacked full of insects, ways to mill to get even more creatures in that graveyard, plenty of recursion to get those insects back on top of your library and overwhelm your opponents into oblivion. So let's get right into the deck tech. As always, we just got to start with the ramp. You can see here we're whacking in those rampy staples in Cultivate and Farseek to search for some lands and get them onto the battlefield. Continuing that trend for lands, we also have a Rampant Growth and we have Dark Ritual, because nothing beats spending 1 black mana to get 3 in return. Next we have Harrow that lets you sack a land for 2 basic land, and Songs of the Damned, which for 1 black mana adds you a mana for each creature in your graveyard. With all of our milling options coming up, this card could be deadly even a couple of turns into the game. Next up we have Village Rites for that cost of sacking a creature that lets you draw 2 cards, and Golgari Signet for that hopefully early turn Rampy Wampy.
You disgust me.
We have some ramp-loving creatures in Nantuko Elder that taps for 1 generic and 1 green, and of course we have Sakura Tribe Elder because it's one of them lovely green staples that you just love to see. Next up we have Kodama's Reach to grab some more land, and finally, as always, last but certainly by no means least, we have Sol Ring, because Sol Ring. Now before we look at all the many insecty boys, make sure to smash that like button and of course subscribe for all things MTG. We are so close to 1,000 subs, so if you haven't already, subscribe. It's free to do, it helps out the channel, it's a win-win for everyone. As we just said, part of this deck is going insect tribal, so here we have a butt ton. First up we have Bane of the Living that lets you morph, and you can have that secondary board wipe option which is just spicy. And we also have Blight Beetle for some pro-green action, and creatures your opponent control can't have +1 counters on them. That is huge. Next up we have Bloodline Pretender, which is a changeling that will beef up the more that insects hit that field, and we have Brain Maggot that ETBs and exiles a target non-land card from an opponent's hand until it leaves the battlefield. We have Brood Hatch Nantuko that says whenever it's dealt damage, you may create that many 1/1 green insect creature tokens, which is another card you may choose to play as a morph, and we have Endless Cockroaches that says whenever it dies, you return it to your hand. Next we have Giant Adaphage, one of the big insect hitters in the deck, and that can be a win con by itself if you manage to get combat damage through and keep creating copies of it. And we have Grave Shell Scarab that you can pay 1 and sack to draw a card. It also has that Dredge ability, which is just perfect in this style of deck. Instead of drawing a card, whack it in your graveyard instead. Next up we have Grave Shifter, another changeling that ETBs and allows you to return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and one of my favourite cards in Izoni Thousand Eyed. You can pay Golgari to sack a creature, gain life and draw a card, and it has that Undergrowth ability that says when it ETBs you create a 1/1 black-green insect creature token for each creature card in your graveyard, and you bet that when we've been to Mill City there will be plenty in there. Next up it's Hornet time with Nest and Queen. Hornet Nest is a defender that when dealt damage creates that many 1/1 insects with flying and death touch, and we have the always scary Hornet Queen that has flying, death touch, and when she ETBs, create 4 1/1 green insect creature tokens with flying and death touch. Yas Queen. In this insect hive we also have Moldgraph Monstrosity, an 8/8 with trample that says when it dies, exile it and return 2 creatures at random from your graveyard to the battlefield. With all the milling and recursion in this deck, you bet you could have this monster out in no time at all. We also have Mortician Beetle that beefs up any time a player sacks a creature. More things that you love to see. It's Beetle Bedlam now with Plague and Quarry. Plague Beetle is a 1/1 with Swamp Walk, and Quarry is a 4/5 that when it ETBs you may return a land card from your graveyard to the field. Perfect when mill becomes a prominent theme in a Golgari deck. On to the last few insects now. We have Saber Ants that says whenever it's dealt damage you may put that many 1/1 green insect creature tokens into play, and Scoot Mob that if you have 5 or more lands on your upkeep you can put 4 +1/+1 counters on it. Huge. And for the last in our insect army, we broke the bank a tiny bit and added in Scoot Swarm, because the temptation to create an army of 1/1 insects and an army of Scoots was just too tempting to pass up. We've mentioned it plenty already, so now we're going to look at all those mill-loving options. Starting with creatures, we're looking at Carrion Grub, another insect that not only beefs up depending on the creatures in your graveyard, but also mills you 4 cards when you ETB. From Kaldheim we also have Throne of Death, the reverse side to Egon. Throne says at the beginning of your upkeep, mill a card. Lovely stuff. For more mill-loving creatures we have Nyx Weaver that mills you 2 at the beginning of your upkeep, and Satyr Wayfinder that ETBs and mills the top 4 cards of your library, and you get to put a land card from among them into your hand, if you get so lucky. For the next milling madness we have Sir Conrad the Grim, a key cog in the deck that makes everyone mill a card and pings each opponent for 1 whenever a creature dies or a creature is put into a graveyard from anywhere. If you get the Recursion engine going, this human knight will be doing damage for days. We also have Mulch, similar to Satyr Wayfinder. We're milling 4, but putting all lands milled this way into our hand. That is naughty. Next we have Perpetual Timepiece, an artifact that can tap to put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard, and Crawling Sensation, which at the beginning of your upkeep allows you to mill 2 cards into your graveyard, and when 1 or more lands are put in the graveyard from anywhere for the first time each turn, you may put a 1/1 insect token onto the battlefield. This card was just made for Grist. And the last piece of mill magic is Timerite Calls the Dead. In parts 1 and 2 of this saga, you mill 3 cards and potentially create zombies, but really, we just want 2 turns of milling them cards. You love to see it. And I don't think I've actually said that yet in this video.
Well, you assumed wrong.
Next up, we're looking at all of the card drawing ways that we've put in this deck, because more cards equals more chance at the win. First, we have a card drawing creature in Grim Harry specs, another morph option that also says whenever another non-token creature you control dies, draw a card. And we have Forever Young that allows you to put any number of target creature cards from your graveyard on top of your library and also draw a card. This is another key cog in the deck, as you could put for instance 10 insect cards on top of your library, use that +1 trigger on Grist and trigger it over and over again. We eventually want to be hitting that -5 ultimate ability, and if we've triggered Grist off a million times and put all those loyalty counters on it, then we're going to be able to do this every single one of our turns. Next up we have another commander staple in Harmonise to draw us 3 cards and Plumb the Forbidden to potentially sack a load of token fodder, draw a load of cards and lose a tiny little bit of life for that privilege. Next up we have Foot Bottom Feast to draw a card and, like Forever Young, give you the chance to put all those insects on top of your library. And we have Grave Purge again to draw you a card and do exactly the same. You can start to see the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle come together here. Next for the card draw we have Abundant Growth to draw you a card and double down on some potential early game ramp. And we have Dark Tutelage to get you a nice tasty card on every one of your upkeep phases. And hopefully again not losing too much life by doing so. Finally, for the last of the card draw celebrations we have Greed. One of my favourite enchantments going, if you have the life to spare, pay a black, lose 2 life and draw a card. For the last section before the lands, we're looking at the removal, recursion and the rest. First off we have Caustic Caterpillar, another lovely insect that you can sack to destroy target artifact or enchantment, and Masked Vandal, a changeling that can also be an insect that when it ETBs, if you exile a creature from your graveyard, you can exile a target artifact or enchantment that your opponent controls. Next we have Black Removal staple in Feed the Swarm to destroy target creature or enchantment, and Annihilate to destroy target non-black creature, also doubling down here as even more card draw. Next up we have Death Sprout to destroy target creature and get that bit of ramp as you search for a non-basic land and put it onto the field tapped. And moving on to the recursion, we also have Ramunap Excavator. We're probably going to end up milling plenty of lands in this deck, so we need ways to get that land out of the graveyard and onto our battlefield. Next we have Dread Return to get a creature from the graveyard to the battlefield, which we may flash back by sacking 3 creatures and stitch together to basically do exactly the same. Next up we have Victimize to sack a creature and return 2 creatures from your graveyard to the battlefield, and Haunted Crossroad to pay a black and put target creature from your graveyard on top of your library. Again, this is key with all those insects as it can really help that Grist trigger. Lastly, we have Elixir of Immortality to gain 5 life and shuffle your entire graveyard back into your library. And lastly, we have another essential win con in Mortal Kombat, which says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 20 or more creature cards in your graveyard, you win the game. It can't get any bigger than that. And as always, for the last section in our budget Grist deck tech, we have all of the lands. To start us off, we have 10 basic forests and 10 basic swamps. Here we have even more commander staples. We have Command Tower and Exotic Orchard. Next we have Blighted Woodland, which we can sack to get 2 basic lands, and Dakmor Salvage to add a black mana or Dredge to get us milling even more cards. Next we have Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse to search us out even more basic lands. And then we have Myriad Landscape to let us sack and search for 2 basic lands that share a land type, and Forge of Heroes to tap and give Grist an extra loyalty counter, which is just insane. Next up we have Golgari Rock Farm and Jungle Hollow for some more staple Golgari commander lands. Next we have Lanoir Wastes and Mortuary Mire. The ETB's tapped and allows you to put a creature from your graveyard on top of your library. Again, even more insect recursion. We also have Tainted Wood and Temple of Malady that allows you to scry 1. And finally, for the land lot, we have Path of Ancestry to get some regular scry action going, and Witch's Cottage, again, to get some more insects from the graveyard on top of your library. This is an amazing budget deck that once the wheels start turning, it'll be super hard to stop. Grist, you are the man, and now I really want to make this deck myself. There we have it, that is the budget deck tech. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to smash that like button and of course subscribe for all things MTG. For now though, I'm all insected out, so I'll see you in the next video.